All right, for today's video review, we're going to start taking a look at the Transformers Generations Legacy, A Hero is Born to pack. Yeah, this is a pretty cool set. Basically, what this set is doing is kind of recreating the whole scene slash sort of origin story from Generation 1 continuity of how Optimus Prime became Optimus Prime, basically, because, you know, if you're unfamiliar, originally he was Orion Pax, and then in the Generation 1 cartoon, he was shot by Megatron and was about to die, and then Alpha Trion rebuilt him into Optimus Prime. And yeah, you know, that origin story has changed a little bit throughout the years. Like nowadays, it's more frequently like, oh, he was Orion Pax, and then given the power of the Matrix, he became Optimus Prime rather than just being built by Alpha Trion. And Alpha Trion is more of like a mentor to him, which I generally prefer. But either way, it's pretty cool to you know, recreate this. So the set comes with a few things here. We're just gonna for today be taking a look at Alpha Trion, and then we'll take a look at Orion Pax properly in my next video. But the set comes with Orion Pax, Alpha Trion, and the Vector Sigma, and the key to Vector Sigma, which is a pretty cool little add-on here. You know, basically the supercomputer that helps create new Cybertronian life in the Generation 1 cartoon. Again, you know, the actual lore and functionality of Vector Sigma and the key to Vector Sigma has definitely changed throughout the years, but that's how it was in G1. And yeah, this is a pretty cool piece here. It comes with this little clear stand that's just in a few pieces here. It's got some nice detail on the actual stand part, and then it has you know, this bar piece that just plugs into the to the bottom here, and then a 5mm port on the bottom of Vector Sigma that you can just plug that in. And yeah, it's nice. It's nice sculpt. It's all painted in gold. It's got the key, which also looks very nice, also painted in gold. Now, one thing that concerns me a little bit is when you plug this in, you are actually, like, it does, you know, make a pretty decent amount of contact there, so I'd be a little bit worried about it kind of scratching the paint off over time if you're like really plugging this in and unplugging it a lot. But you know, not the end of the world, but it is something that, you know, I'm a little bit worried about the longevity of. But yeah, that's Vector Sigma. Not a lot to it, but, you know, just basically it's a ball, which is pretty accurate to how Vector Sigma was in the G1 cartoon. So it works, even if it's not, you know, very exciting, doesn't do a whole lot, but that's okay. But yeah, we'll just take that off to the side for now, and take Orion Pax off and his accessories, and just take a more specific look at Alpha Trion. Now, this is a retool, you know, very slight remold, but mostly just the same mold as Studio Series 86 Scourge or Studio Series 86 Sweep, whichever. They're the same pretty much. So yeah, you know, it's I would one day like to get an Alpha Trion that is actually just his own mold, but if I had to do Alpha Trion as a repaint, this would be the mold to choose. Like, it definitely suits him, I think, pretty well. Though, you know, again, it's not perfect in robot mode, and I feel like, I don't know, I've always really liked Alpha Trion's design, and I think that it would be done better if they just made him his own figure. Like, you know, I know, like, he didn't have a vehicle mode design in the G1 cartoon, so they'd have to make something up, God forbid. But, I mean, they did that for, like, the Bumblebee movie designs, even though those were probably based on concept art and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I don't feel like it'd be that big of a challenge to just make up an alt mode for Orion Pax or for Alpha Trion, but either way, this is what we've got, and it does work nicely as repaints go. But yeah, he looks good in his spaceship mode here. Obviously, it is very Scourgey. I think that, you know, I think I might take these bits off just because they feel so specific to Scourge's alt mode. And again, he's got the one in the middle too, whereas Alpha Trion hasn't. And they're not hard to take off. I mean, they're kind of hard in this mode for some reason. Like when this is tabbed in, it's hard to like get these off the hinge. But in robot mode, they just pop right out, and it's not too bad. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just like that. You know, they're not too easy to pop out. Maybe I'll 3D print a section that kind of fills this and then paint it to either match the purple or the maroon. I don't know. I just think that it would look a little bit nicer in terms of differentiating the two. Now I'm not going to be able to get this back on, but yeah, just because I feel like the the three, little pylons here, or whatever you want to call them, are just a little bit more specific to Scourge. So it doesn't really feel like something that's as appropriate for Alpha Trion, especially when he doesn't have the third one in the middle there. So I don't know. It's not the end of the world. Obviously, it would be very, very easy fix, but that's something I might do. But otherwise, I think it looks good. In terms of like remolding and stuff, he does share quite a few parts with Scourge. There's more remolding in robot mode than there is in vehicle mode, but we can show them off together. So you can see it's mostly the same mold. There's a few visible parts in this mold that are different. I think the most obvious one is the little back section here that goes up against the back of his head is different, obviously, because he's got a different head in robot mode. So you can see his little head crest poking out of the top there because of, how this mold works. And then the other remolded parts are this little section in the middle here, which they've kind of turned into a little like a cockpit, I guess. Which, is kind of sculpted in there on this one, but isn't the same sculpt and isn't, picked out in paint or anything. And then the little bit that covers the face is different too, because of how it needs to fit to the contour of the face. And that's pretty much it. The rest of it is the exact same mold. Obviously, in vehicle mode. Like in robot mode, there's some stuff that's different. Like, these bits are different, and we'll see a bit more. But yeah, that's what they look like together. His weapon here is the exact same one that comes with Studio Series 86 Scourge. It doesn't come with the blast effect, oddly, that came with both versions of that mold, which is fine. I don't need it, but it is a little weird to omit that. But yeah, for storage in this mode, they just want you to peg it onto the side, just like they did with Scourge. And I still don't like that, but I don't know. It's with Alpha Trion specifically, I don't really think of him as a character that even has a weapon, so I'm fine with just putting this in a box, but to each his own. That's where it's supposed to store, is just on the side there. In terms of other comparisons, obviously we saw him with Scourge, we saw him with Orion Pax. Just for a standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. Here he is with Optimus Prime, the Earthrise Optimus Prime in his truck mode. Not that we ever saw the two of them together in vehicle mode, because we never saw him in vehicle mode at all, but that's what they look like together. And then just for another 13 Primes comparison in this mode, here he is with Cybertron Vector Sigma. I like the continuity of Alpha Trion being one of the 13 Primes, but obviously in the G1 continuity, which this set is referencing, that wasn't really a thing. But they've later kind of decided that Alpha Trion was one of the original 13 Primes, and I like that. I like that continuity of him being one of them. So that's what they look like together. We'll show him off with a few more in robot mode. But yeah, for vehicle mode, that's pretty much it. If you've had Scourge or the Sweep, you know what you're getting into. It's pretty much the same. But yeah, in terms of transformation, obviously exactly the same as Scourge. You just want to take these little wing bits and just fold them out to the side for now, just about this much. I find that like in this mode, they bump up against like these bits when you're trying to fold them out. So you can't fold them up much more than that at this stage, because then they tend to pop off. But then you want to take these middle panels and just kind of peg them from the side. They're not really pegged in. They're kind of like latched in with a T-tab, but you get the point. And then you can take these little bits and just fold them down, and then take this whole section, and it kind of like tabs in a few places up here. So you just want to loosen that up and bring it up on this double hinge, just like that, just about that far for now, just to kind of get it out of the way. And then you can take the wing sections here, becoming, the front of the ship, and just untab them from each other, and then fold them out to the side, which can be kind of a challenge sometimes. They're on like this double hinge section. Yep, there's one of those. And even with Scourge, it can be kind of difficult to actually unhinge this sometimes. But once you get it, it's fine. We can put that back on. So yeah, just bring that out to the side for now. Take these sections and take these little panels and fold them in. Take these sections and fold them in if you haven't already. Kind of fold these out to the side and then double hinge it up to sit on the back of the wings, just like that. Then we want to take this panel here, untab it from what will be the legs, and then kind of bring it up like this. Fold this down so you can take the little face cover and then fold that up just like that. Untab this section and fold it into the body. And then you want to double hinge this section up like that, so that the hinge will actually sit in this section right here. So you just bring it up like that and tab it into place. take this purple panel, just fold it onto his back, and then take the little bit that sits behind his head and fold that onto his back as well. Then you can take the wings, and they're on a double hinge here, and there's a tab on this purple piece that will go into a slot on the maroon armature there. So you just fold it up like that. Then, just like Scourge, we can take the arms, they're just tabbed into the legs, and just bring them up and connect them to the body, and then bring them back down. Untab the legs from each other, flip out the toes and heels, and there you have Alpha Trion in his robot mode. And yeah, he looks fantastic. I mean, again, you know, I think the main difference here between him and what a potential figure with a unique mold could have had is this is kind of a lot for the wings of Alpha Trion. Like, really, he had more of just like a triangle cape, you know, with two sections. And this is definitely much more like Scourge wings with just kind of an Alpha Trion flavor, which, you know, again, like I said, if we're going to be doing Alpha Trion as a remold, this is obviously the mold to choose because it has a Cybertronian vehicle mode. You know, it has the wings, even if they're not the exact same. And, you know, it just overall fits his vibe. But yeah, there's a fair amount of like new sculpt on here, which we can show off later. Right off the bat, the shoulders are new. The chest section is new. And obviously the head is new. And then these little wing tips are also new. And yeah, taking a look at the head sculpt, I think this is pretty much perfect for what you'd want for an Alpha Trion head sculpt. Like, it definitely looks dead on to how he looked in the G1 cartoon with the goatee there and the weird sort of like shape for his like eyebrows slash like mask crest section there. I think it looks fantastic. And the colors are also really spot on. Yeah, just looks really good. In terms of articulation, it's very similar to Scourge. Obviously, the head is on a ball joint here. So it can rotate around a little bit, though obviously his beard bumps into the collar at some point. The shoulders here are on a swivel joint right here, so they can rotate around and then hinge out to the side. I have found that for some reason, like, they feel like they have a little bit of wiggle to them, like not the joint itself, but like where the joint is attached. Well, I guess it is. It's like the swivel joint rather than the hinge joint. It feels like a little bit, it's not like loose, like it's not going to flop around, but it feels like a little bit like not properly seated in there or something. It's not a huge deal. It just feels a little bit flimsy when you're moving it around, which is not great, but whatever. He's got a bicep swivel, over 90 degrees of bend at the elbow there. He has a wrist swivel. He's got a waist cut right there. The hips can go forward, back, you know, only so far before they start bumping into stuff back here, but they can bend all the way back if you maneuver them around stuff. Out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel here, which is pretty tight on mine. It's got maybe a degree over 90 degrees of bend at the knee. And then the feet, both the heels and the toes can tilt down. And he does have an ankle tilt, but just like Scourge, for some reason, it doesn't really like to actually stay tilted out. It kind of clicks back into place. So you know, his feet are kind of slim enough that I don't think he really needs one. Like, it always kind of looks like he's more or less flat-footed anyway, so it's not a huge deal, but that is a little weird that joint doesn't actually seem to function very well. But yeah, that's his articulation. Then obviously the wings, you can kind of fold back as much as you want, and you can fold these pieces in. But yeah, no, I think it works pretty well. Obviously, we can give him his gun, though, again, you know, I don't think it really suits him to have a gun. And in terms of storage, you're just supposed to peg it onto the wings here, which sits off a little bit, and you can kind of see it from the back. Again, I don't really think that Alpha Trion needs a gun in general, so I'm not bothered by leaving it in the box, but that's how it functions in this mode. Here he is again with Vector Sigma, so you can see how that looks, and I think that's a really great looking display. Like, even if you don't have Orion Pax involved, like, just, you know, Alpha Trion as the character that in the G1 cartoon generally guarded Vector Sigma, I think it looks great. And if you take the key here, because he has the open Scourge hands, you can actually get the key to kind of get into his hands. Again, it's another case where it's like, it feels like it's a bit of a tight connection, which worries me about the paint on the key itself. But once you get in there, it holds just fine. If you get it kind of like latched into some of the surface detail, it's actually kind of loose in there, but it is, you know, it stays in there. And I think that looks fairly natural, just in terms of, like, I'm glad that they gave him the open hand versions of this mold so that he could actually do that. But you can pose him there with Vector Sigma, and I think that looks really cool. In terms of other comparisons. For the figure he comes packed with, here he is again with Orion Pax in his robot mode. And again, I think they look pretty good together. Just for a standard size comparison, here he is with Deluxe Class Kingdom Sideswipe again. Here he is with not Scourge, but the Sweep, but they're the same mold, just so you can see all the different detailing here. And they've done some pretty clever bits of remolding. Like obviously, the main chest section is remolded, and they've done a really neat thing where like the collar that sits behind his head is also something that Scourge had, but they've instead of remolding that piece to kind of extend the collar out, they remolded the chest section so it like adds a little bit extra onto it, so it kind of swoops down and like sits down into the chest more like Alpha Trion's collar originally did. So even though it's using the exact same back piece that sits behind the head, they've really changed the shape of it by like adding bits onto the front with the resculpted chest, which I think is a really neat little addition there. He's got like new shoulders, so he's got like pretty much everything from the elbow up is new. So they've kind of implied that that this kind of like sits in like this. Again, it's like I can see why they would do it that way rather than having like a separate piece that actually attaches in here and potentially hinders the articulation in the arm. But in the original Alpha Trion design, like this is the joint that the shoulder pad was connected to, and it would hinge up and down with his arm rather than like disjointing at this section, but it still captures the same look. And then obviously the heads are very different, and like I said, these little wing bits. Oh, and look at that, I didn't even notice that before. The upper thighs are also different, but yeah, everything else is pretty much the same. I'm fairly certain it's the same. Oh no, it's not. Look at that. I thought that the hands were the same, but I guess they aren't. I thought that they had just given him, both of the open hands as opposed to the one open hand and the one closed hand like they did on Scourge and the Sweep. But no, it actually looks like it is a different mold. Like it's pretty similar, but it's not the same exact sculpt. So that's neat. A pretty decent amount of resculpting there. Really, it's mostly just like the wing sections are mostly the same, so it looks pretty similar in vehicle mode. But there's a pretty significant amount of departures in robot mode. But yeah, here he is also with Optimus Prime, just so you can see what the two of them look like together for, after he rebuilds Orion Pax. And I think that works pretty well. I like him being a little bit shorter than Optimus Prime, but not so short that like he's a deluxe and he's a Voyager. Just, that works pretty well. And then here he is again with Vector Sigma, and then I'm going to have to adjust the camera here. And I also want to show him off with my other current versions of the 13 primes. This is about, I have a little bit less than half of them kind of sorted out at this point. It's going to be kind of an ongoing project, but for now, we've got Alpha Trion, Vector Sigma. For Onyx Prime, I'm using the Transformers Prime Voyager, like one of the Voyager versions of Predaking. I think that works pretty well just because, he turns into a dragon, so it's not like an earth animal necessarily. And I don't know, it kind of matches the look and color scheme from his design in the Covenant of Primus, intentional or otherwise. So that's who I have for Onyx Prime. For my Cronus Prime, I'm just using the little Minimus Ambus that came with Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus, who originally I did have as Minimus Ambus for a while, but I think he works really well as a Micronus Prime because like the chest detailing looks somewhat similar. He's got, like the beard thing, which kind of makes him look like Alpha Trion. And his vehicle mode, though it is a car, which is like an Earth thing, it's definitely some kind of alien car because it doesn't have like proper wheels. So I think that works well enough. For Alchemist Prime, I have a custom figure here. This is actually the Transformers 2007 movie Protoform Starscream, which I've kind of, repainted to be a little bit more inspired by Alchemist Prime's design in the Covenant of Primus. Obviously, I'm sure you can guess that I really like Alchemist Prime just because of the name of this channel. Really, I just think it sounds like a cool name. But yeah, I don't know. I know that a lot of people use the Build-A-Figure from Cyberverse of, McAdam, and I don't really want to be able to, I don't want to have to track down all the parts for that, because like it was a Build-A-Figure and I don't actually want any of the individual figures that the parts came with. And because it's a Build-A-Figure, it doesn't transform. It's really short. It's got, I don't know, kind of the Cyberverse aesthetic, which I don't think fits in super well with the rest of them. And it doesn't really look like any previous iteration of the character. So, I don't know. I think it's possible we might be able to get like a Generations version of like McAdam, like the G1 sort of, comic design with the, the beard and the mustache and the turquoise color scheme. And that might be a better version for like an Alchemist Prime. But for now, I'm satisfied with this guy here. And then I've got the Protoform Optimus Prime. A lot of people use this guy as Prima in their collection of the 13 Primes, but personally, I think that if we are ever getting a Prima should be at least a Voyager. Like, I don't really like him being a short figure like a deluxe. So I have him as my 13th Prime, as the Arisen or whatever. I know, like, in the Covenant of Primus, the continuity is that the Arisen becomes Orion Pax and then Optimus Prime. I don't really like that. So personally, I choose in my own headcanon, sort of similar to the IDW Comics version. I have it just be like a rumor that Optimus Prime was the 13th Prime, when in reality that's not actually the case. And then this lad, the Arisen, which is another thing that they call him in the comics, is the actual 13th Prime. So I thought it would be appropriate for him to look similar to Prime but different. So having him as the protoform Optimus Prime from the first movie. And that's all I've got for right now. It's is he even on frame? I don't know. Yeah, I can't see, but a little, like I said, a little less than halfway there. It's an ongoing project, and I don't want to try to like force too many things in the middle. There's a few of them that I don't really think that there are any good versions of yet. Like, there are ones that are just like a real head scratching challenge, like Quintus Prime or Amalgamus Prime, that are just like, I don't know how they're gonna ever do that. I've considered maybe trying to make like a Amalgamus Prime out of like ConstructBot parts or something. I don't know. I don't necessarily need him to be an infinite changer like he is in the Covenant of Primus, but any existing 6 changer or more is just too specific to other characters like RID Megatron or 6 Shot or one of those. It's just like I don't really want them to be like so closely resembling the other more established characters. So I don't really know what to do for that one. For Nexus Prime, there are official toys of it, but like it's really expensive because it was all like con exclusives and things like that. And also every version of Nexus Prime that has existed has been done using molds that turn into Earth-based vehicles, which I don't think makes any sense. And like the only combiner to, that I can think of that is like based on Cybertronian modes is like the Fall of Cybertron Bruticus, which A, looks too specific to Bruticus, even if all those figures were repainted, and B, that figure is just not great. So I don't know. Eventually, maybe we'll get another, combiner that has more Cybertronian bits. And then who's left? Prima and Solus Prime. There are good third-party versions of them by Mastermind Creations, but I don't generally tend to do a lot of third party just because it's over expensive for what you're actually getting, in my opinion. So, Seraphicus Promenon would be a great Prima, and Salvia Promenon would make a great Solus Prime. But I'm not going to buy those figures just because they're a little bit out of my price range for what you're actually getting. Eventually I'm sure we'll get new ones. Liege Maximo, there's another YouTuber who did a great custom of Liege Maximo using the Studio Series Thrust mold from the Bumblebee movie, the green one. So I might do that, maybe see if I can get that figure on sale eventually and give him horns, because I think that would work well enough for me. And then the Fallen is like, there's third-party versions of the Fallen, but I have absolutely no doubt that eventually we will get a new version of the Fallen from like the Dreamwave comics. So I think that one's just a matter of time. Like, that's an iconic design, so I'm sure that they'll do that eventually, especially since they have the Fallen trademark and keep it active. So maybe a few years after that Studio Series one comes out, we'll see a new version of that, the Fallen. And then who am I missing? Quintus Prime. I don't know. I've considered maybe trying to hunt down the Hunt for the Decepticons, the movie The Fallen, as that one, the blue one, just because, like, A, it looks a little bit different from the the movie The Fallen design, and B, Quintus Prime is kind of like the creator of the Quintessons, so I feel like having that sort of like weird sort of Egyptian pharaoh aesthetic, like the Quintessons kind of do, and the Revenge of the Fallen kind of does, might work for that. I don't know. Maybe I'll consider just getting the Leader Class Studio Series, The Fallen, when it comes out. Maybe I'll wait to see if I can get it on sale and use that as my Quintus Prime. I don't know. That's just sort of my thoughts on the remaining ones. I might be forgetting somebody, but I'm not going to count them all out here. But either way, I'm satisfied with this display for now. It's one of those projects that you just have to let take a while. To actually do it properly. But yeah, that's enough rambling about the 13 primes. But that's what he looks like with the ones that I have currently. And yeah, I think that this is a pretty good figure overall. Obviously, it's pretty much the same as Studio Series Scourge. It has the same kind of issues of like the stuff's falling over, of the the ankle tilt not functioning properly, but again, that's not a huge deal. And just the fact that like it is pretty much a shell former. Like almost none of the robot mode aside from the very top of the head is even visible in alt mode if you're not counting the wings, which is a little rough, but it's not the end of the world, I guess. It's just, I'd prefer it not be that way. But otherwise, I think it looks really good. And, again, I'd love to have this design where the wings are actually proper and not like kind of Scourge wings. And maybe we'll get one eventually. But for now, I think that this is a pretty good Alpha Trion and definitely the best sort of G1 representation that we've gotten, in my opinion. Just the head sculpt alone, I think, looks absolutely fantastic. So yeah, we'll be back again next time to take a look at Orion Pax. But for now, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy, A Hero is Born, Alpha Trion.